Countless leaders and professionals face the exhausting pain of being stuck at merely good, watching their organizations wallow in mediocrity despite working relentlessly. To solve this, they often desperately chase the latest technology fads, launch massive restructurings, or hire celebrity savior executives, only to fall back into a disappointing doom loop. In Good to Great, Jim Collins shatters these myths, revealing that the true path to enduring greatness actually relies on quiet, humble level 5 leadership and getting the right people on the bus before you even decide where to drive. By listening to this book, you will discover the deceptive simplicity of the Hedgehog Concept and how to build unstoppable, cumulative momentum through the Flywheel Effect. Click to learn how to outsmart conventional business wisdom, escape the exhausting doom loop, and transform your good organization into a great one forever.
Yeah, so it's a pretty bold promise right out of the
Right.
gate.
It really is. And welcome to today's deep dive, by the way.
Thanks. I mean, what I really love about this book, and, the reason it's still sitting on basically every executive's desk 20 years later, is that Collins didn't just write some kind of philosophy book.
Right. It's more like a physics book.
Exactly, a physics book.
Right.
He wasn't looking for quick tips or hacks. He was looking for these immutable laws of organizational gravity.
Which is actually kind of funny because for a book that treats business with that level of scientific rigor, the origin story is, well, it's actually a little petty.
Oh, it totally was a slap in the face.
Yeah, so I was reading the background,
Uh-huh.
and the whole project basically started because somebody insulted his previous work at a dinner.
Right? Yeah, back in 1996, he's having dinner in San Francisco with this senior partner from McKinsey, the huge consulting firm.
Uh-huh.
And Collins had just put out Built to Last, which was this massive bestseller about visionary companies. And the McKinsey partner leans over and essentially tells him that his work is useless.
Useless. I mean, that's a brutal thing to hear over dinner.
It is, but the partner actually had a really sharp point. He said, look, the companies you wrote about, they were always great. They had these genius founders from day one, people like David Packard or Walt Disney.
But most people listening right now do not work for those kinds of companies.
Exactly. Most of us wake up and go to work at companies that are just good, or honestly just average. So the really question the partner posed was, can a merely good company actually become a great one?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because good is usually where ambition just dies.
Good is the enemy of great.
Right, that's the opening line of the book. It's so easy for you to just settle for a good career or a good quarter, a good product.
So to answer that challenge, Collins just went completely maniacal. He didn't just write a quick think piece. He launched this massive 5-year research project looking at over 1,400 companies across a 30-year span.
And the criteria they used to actually define a great company were...
Absolutely brutal. Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah. You couldn't just have one lucky year.
Right, you had to have 15 years of average performance, and then that had to be followed immediately by 15 years of spectacular performance, like beating the market by at least 3 times.
And out of those 1,400 plus candidates, guess how many actually made the cut?
11,
Just 11.
which is less than 1%.
Right, and that's exactly what makes the data so incredibly powerful. They took these 11 unicorns companies like Walgreens and Gillette and Wells Fargo, and they compared them directly to companies in the exact same industries.
Companies that had the exact same resources but just failed to make the leap.
Exactly, to isolate the variables and figure out what the winners actually did differently.
So let's get right into those variables. Because if I'm betting on a company to turn around, I'm usually looking for a celebrity CEO. The titan of industry guy.
That is the standard assumption, yeah.
The charismatic visionary on the cover of Fortune magazine who just commands the room.
We all kind of want a savior. We want an Al Dunlap or a Lee Iacocca type figure. But the data completely destroyed that myth. In every single one of those 11 companies, the CEO was actually the exact opposite of a celebrity.
Okay, but what does opposite mean here? Are we just talking about someone who's shy? Being quiet doesn't magically make you a billionaire.
No, it's not just about being quiet. Collins calls it level 5 leadership. It's this really fascinating paradox where these leaders have extreme personal humility, but they combine it with this fanatical, terrifying professional will.
Terrifying will and humility do not usually go together. Give me a concrete example of this.
Okay, so the poster child for this is Darwin Smith of Kimberly-Clark.
I've actually never heard of him.
Which perfectly proves the point. When he took over Kimberly-Clark, it was just this stuffy, mediocre paper company. And Smith himself was their in-house lawyer. He was kind of dowdy, looked a bit like a goofy professor.
He had some serious grit,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. He grew up poor, worked day shifts, and went to school at night. He actually cut off part of his finger working at International Harvester.
Wow, okay.
And the legend is that he still went to his night class the very same day he lost the finger. That's the intense will part.
But how does that translate to running a massive corporation?
Well, 2 months after he becomes CEO, he gets diagnosed with nose and throat cancer. And the doctors tell him to get his affairs in order because he has less than a year to live.
Most people would just retire on the spot.
But he told the board, "I'm not dead yet." He commuted every week from Wisconsin to Houston for radiation, dragging himself back and forth while making some of the gutsiest business decisions in history.
And he lived for another 25 years, right?
He did. He beat the cancer, and he beat the market by a factor of 4.
But you mentioned he made gutsy decisions. Usually, when we think of a humble leader, we picture someone who's afraid to rock the boat. They want consensus.
That's the big misconception. Level 5 leaders are humble about themselves, not the company. Smith actually decided that their core business-coded paper was a total loser. So he sold the mills. He basically sold the entire history of the company.
And bet the farm on consumer products.
Exactly. Huggies and Kleenex. Going head-to-head with Procter & Gamble.
That's a declaration of war, not humility.
Right. But he didn't do it to get famous. He did it because it was what the company needed. Now, if you contrast that with the CEO of their rival Scott Paper, they brought in Al Dunlap, who was known as Chainsaw Al.
Oh, I remember reading about him. He was a huge media darling for a while.
He was a total spectacle. He would scream at executives, and he slashed thousands of jobs just to pump up the stock price for a quick sale.
He even wrote a book about himself called Mean Business, right?
Yes, and in it, he actually compared himself to Rambo.
Like Sylvester Stallone Rambo.
Literally, he called himself Rambo in pinstripes. He said he creates peace out of war, just like Rambo.
That is just overwhelmingly egocentric.
And the results reflect that ego. Scott Paper got a quick bump, then imploded, and was sold off. Meanwhile, Kimberly-Clark, under quiet Darwin Smith, became an absolute juggernaut.
So the data actually showed that in over 2/3 of the comparison cases, a massive personal ego at the top actively contributed to the company's demise.
Exactly. The level 5 leader channels their ambition into the institution, not into the mirror.
Okay, so you have this humble, fiercely driven leader. You'd think their very first step is to draw up a brilliant new strategy.
Right, that's the standard MBA playbook. Vision, then strategy, then structure. But the great companies did it completely backward. They didn't start with where they were going. They started with who was coming with them.
This is the famous first who, then what concept.
Sure.
The bus analogy.
Right, you get the right people on the bus, you get the wrong people off the bus, and you get the right people in the right seats. Only after you do all that do you figure out where to drive.
I have to push back a little here, though. If you walk into a board meeting today and say, hey, I just hired a bunch of expensive executives, but I have absolutely no idea what our product strategy is, you are getting fired.
It sounds totally reckless, I know. But if you think about the logic behind it, it makes sense. If you hire people to execute a very specific strategy, say fixing fax machines, what happens when the market shifts and fax machines become obsolete?
You're just stuck with a desk full of fax machine repairmen.
Exactly. But if you hire brilliant, adaptable problem solvers who are on the bus, mostly because they want to work with the other great people on the bus, they can pivot to anything.
And the book uses Wells Fargo as the big example for this, right?
Yes. Back in the 70s, their CEO just started stockpiling outstanding talent whenever he found it, often without even having a specific job description in mind for them.
They just wanted the best people.
Right. And they built a team so strong that industry insiders started calling them the Wells of America, implying they were actually better than Bank of America, which was the giant at the time.
And Bank of America was following a totally different model.
They used the weak general, strong lieutenants model. They had a genius at the top giving orders to 1,000 helpers.
Which works perfectly until the genius retires or makes a bad call.
Precisely. And when the banking industry went through massive deregulation, the Wells Fargo team just adapted and figured it out. Bank of America really struggled because their people were only trained to follow directions.
There's a rule related to this called Packard's Law that I found super interesting. It acts like a speed limit for growth.
It is the ultimate bottleneck. Packard's Law states that no company can grow revenues consistently faster than its ability to get enough of the right people to implement that growth.
We usually think the limit is capital or market size.
But Collins argues those are secondary. If your company grows 20% a year, but your talent pool only grows 10%, you will collapse. You'll start hiring warm bodies just to fill empty seats.
And once you let those wrong people on the bus, the culture dilutes and the good people start leaving. Which brings us to getting the wrong people off the bus. This is where people get nervous because it sounds a lot like Chainsaw Owl just firing everyone.
It's a really crucial distinction. The great companies were not ruthless. They were rigorous. Ruthless is just hacking and slashing jobs blindly to save a buck. Rigorous means applying a very high standard consistently.
How does that actually look in practice, though?
They followed a simple rule. When you know you need to make a people change, you act. You do not delay. The comparison companies would wait and hope the person improved and move them to a different department.
While the high performers get totally frustrated carrying the dead weight.
Exactly. If you have the right people, the whole problem of motivation basically vanishes. They are self-motivated.
Okay, so we have the bus loaded with these self-motivated superstars, but the road ahead is usually pretty nasty. Which brings us to the Stockdale paradox. This is probably the darkest part of the deep dive today, but also really inspiring.
It's profound. It's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was the highest-ranking U.S. military officer in the Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp during Vietnam.
He was there for 8 years, right? Tortured and isolated.
Yes, and he had no release date, no idea if he'd ever see his family again. When Collins interviewed him, he asked Stockdale who didn't make it out of the camp.
And his answer is just haunting. He said, the optimists.
Which totally stops you in your tracks because we're constantly told that positive thinking is everything.
Right, you have to visualize success.
But Stockdale said the optimists were the ones who said, we'll be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and go. Then they'll say, we'll be out by Easter. And Easter would pass. And eventually, they just died of a broken heart because they could not handle the crushing reality of the gap between their hopes and their actual situation.
So if optimism is what kills you, what is the thing that actually saves you?
That's the paradox. You have to maintain absolute, unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end. But at the exact same time, you have to have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be.
So it's this intense duality. I will survive this camp, but I am not getting out by Christmas, and I'm currently being tortured.
Exactly. And translating that to business, the comparison companies constantly tried to shield their people from the truth. They spun bad news, but the good to great companies were completely obsessed with the brutal facts.
They looked right at the data showing their product was failing, and they didn't blink. But honestly, confronting every single brutal fact can be paralyzing. You need some kind of filter for all that data.
Which is exactly where the hedgehog concept comes into play. It's how you make sense of the brutal facts without getting overwhelmed.
This comes from that old Greek parable, right? The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing.
Yes, the fox is cunning and fast and tries a million different strategies to catch the hedgehog, but the hedgehog just does one thing perfectly. It rolls up into a spiky ball and wins every single time.
And Collins found the mediocre companies were acting like foxes.
They were completely scattered, acquiring random businesses, jumping on fads. The great companies simplified their entire world into one single organizing principle.
But you can't just pick any random thing. Like, I can't just say my hedgehog concept is eating the most pizza. It has to fit into 3 very specific circles.
Right, the 3 circles. Circle 1 is, what can you be the absolute best in the world at? And just as importantly, what can you not be the best at? Circle 2 is, what are you deeply passionate about? And circle 3 is, what drives your economic engine?
I really want to focus on that third one, the economic engine. The book talks about finding a single economic denominator, and that sounded a bit technical until I read the Walgreens example.
The Walgreens story clarifies it perfectly. Most retailers automatically focus on profit per store. It seems obvious, right?
Yeah, if you want more money, you build a bigger store, you open more of them.
But Walgreens looked at their brutal facts and realized their hedgehog concept wasn't about being the biggest. It was about being the most convenient drugstore. So they shifted their entire financial metric to profit per customer visit.
Which sounds like just a tiny tweak in the accounting department.
It sounds tiny, but it completely changed the physics of their entire operation. If you optimize for profit per visit, you stop building massive stores in cheap strip malls. Instead, you buy up expensive corner lots so people can get in and out quickly.
You add drive-through pharmacies.
Exactly. You optimize for high-density convenience. That one specific metric drove their real estate strategy for decades.
And it took incredible discipline because they actually had to kill off a massive chunk of their existing business to stay true to that concept.
They had a huge food service business with over 500 restaurants. It was actually where the company started, and it was profitable.
But they looked at the three circles and realized they could never be the best in the world at running restaurants.
So they did what they called corking the toaster ovens. They literally shut down all the restaurants to focus 100% of their energy on convenient drugstores.
Meanwhile, their main competitor, Eckerd, was out there buying a candy company and a video rental chain.
Pure fox behavior, jumping at shiny objects. Walgreens was the hedgehog. It might seem boring, but it was unbelievably effective.
Okay, so we have the humble leader, the right team on the bus, confronting the brutal facts, and our clear hedgehog concept. Now we actually have to get moving. Which brings us to the flywheel.
This is the part people get wrong the most often.
Because we all love the breakthrough moment narrative. The media trains us to look for that one killer innovation that changes everything overnight.
We desperately want that miracle moment, but the research proved it just does not exist. Greatness is a cumulative process. It is not a single event.
The image Collins uses of the heavy flywheel is so visceral.
Picture this massive metal disc weighing 5,000 pounds mounted on an axle. Your job is to get it spinning. You give it a huge push, and it barely moves a single inch.
You keep pushing, and eventually it moves a few more inches.
You push for days or weeks, and finally it makes one full rotation, then 2, then 10.
It's just relentless heavy lifting.
It is. But because you keep pushing in the exact same direction, completely aligned with your hedgehog concept, the momentum starts to build. Suddenly it's doing 100 turns a minute, then 1,000.
And at that point, the weight of the wheel is actually working for you instead of against you.
It develops its own unstoppable cumulative force.
And this is where the comparison companies totally fell apart into what Collins called the doom loop. They just didn't have the patience to keep pushing in one direction.
They would push the wheel one way, get bored, stop, and then try to push it a completely different way. Or a new savior CEO would come in and yell, "Stop the wheel, we're spinning it in reverse now."
The Harris Corporation story is the perfect tragicomedy for this.
Oh, the doom loop in its purest form. Harris was actually building some really good flywheel momentum in the printing business. Then they get a new CEO, Joseph Boyd, and he decides to move the entire corporate headquarters from Cleveland down to Melbourne, Florida.
Let me guess, he was just really tired of the snow.
He had a 47-foot powerboat.
Wow.
He wanted his boat parked near the office, so he moves the headquarters and then divests their printing business, which was the core of their flywheel, just to fund a bunch of random, unproven ventures.
Just throwing a giant wrench right into the spinning wheel.
That is the doom loop. It's reactionary, ego-driven, and totally lacks consistency.
Now, before we wrap up, I have to ask about technology.
Right.
Because this book was written during the massive dot-com bubble in the late 90s. Everyone believed the internet was a magic pill.
And Collins specifically warned against that exact mindset. He found that the great companies absolutely use technology, but strictly as an accelerator of momentum, never as the creator of it.
What's the practical difference there?
Look at Nucor Steel. They're one of the great companies, and they adopted this new manufacturing technology called mini mills. Now, people look back and say, well, Nucor won because they had the better tech.
But Bethlehem Steel had the money to buy the exact same machines, right?
Exactly. The tech was available to anyone who could write a check. Nucor won because their culture, their discipline, and their right people on the bus allowed them to actually use that technology effectively.
It's like giving a Formula One car to a professional driver versus giving it to a teenager who just got their license. The car itself does not make you a champion driver.
That's exactly it. And if your company is already stuck in a doom loop, throwing new technology at it will just accelerate your demise. You'll just crash into the wall faster.
That is a really sobering thought today with the whole AI craze. Everyone thinks AI is going to magically fix their broken business models.
But if you do not have a clear hedgehog concept, AI is just going to help you execute the wrong strategy much faster.
Wow, yeah. Okay, so we've unpacked the entire physics set. Level 5 leadership, first who, then what, brutal facts, the hedgehog concept, and the flywheel. It's a brilliant, cohesive system. But the book actually ends on this surprisingly philosophical note. It's not just about maximizing shareholder value.
No, it really is not. Collins asks this fundamental question at the end. Why bother? Why do all this incredibly hard work? And his ultimate answer is that it's about having a meaningful life.
which seems like a big leap from steel mills and drugstores. How does he connect business greatness to personal meaning?
He argues that it's practically impossible to have a truly great life unless you have meaningful work. And meaningful work comes from doing something you are genuinely passionate about with people you actually respect and enjoy being around while trying to be the best in the world at it.
That really hits home. Because if you secretly hate everyone else on the bus, it really doesn't matter how fast the bus is going or where it ends up.
Exactly. When you actually stick to these principles, you get more than just the stock bump. You get to go to sleep at night knowing you built something enduring and you did it alongside people you care about. That is the real payoff.
And for anyone listening who is wondering what actually happens after you finally achieve greatness, we should point out that Good to Great is technically a prequel.
Right. His previous book, Built to Last, covers what happens to those visionary companies over the next 50 or 100 years.
So this book is the startup guide, and the other is the legacy guide.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a phenomenal deep dive into the real physics of organizations. It definitely makes you take a hard look at your own team and, frankly, your own ego.
It is definitely a mirror that does not lie.
Something for you all to think about is what would happen if you applied the Hedgehog concept not just to your company, but to your own personal career trajectory. What is the one big thing you can be the best in the world at? Thank you for watching. Please like out, share, subscribe, follow up in the next video.